We're going to start this document in Adobe Illustrator by creating a new document that's 8 inches wide by 10 inches tall. Make sure also that we're working in RGB color mode. You may have to open up the advanced options and choose RGB from here. Once you've got 8 by 10 inches created, we'll create our new document. And the first thing we want to do is to fill the entire area with a simple rectangle. I'm going to use my rectangle tool, and with it, the color and the fill or the stroke won't really matter. I'm simply going to click and drag on the inside of it to create a rectangle that gives me about a ½ inch margin on the inside. Now this doesn't have to be a perfect size, but it's going to be roughly 7.5 by 9.5 inches. With it still selected, let's open up Adobe Illustrator's AI Generative Tools. Go up to Window and down to the very bottom and choose Text to Vector Graphic. This may still be in beta version, but this gives us the ability to type in a prompt of exactly what we want to create in vector format. Now there's a few things we want to make sure that are set up. Under Type, make sure Scene is selected. Under the Styles and Settings, make sure Match Active Artboard Style is unchecked, and that your detail of your vector graphics is set to minimal. Now this is the kind of thing we need to just play around with because your results are going to look drastically different from mine, and that's okay. Under the prompt, I've given you a variety of different prompts that you can use, but we want to use a couple of descriptive adjectives and verbs and describers to generate an image of a scene that we want to create. In my case, if I did something like stained glass Christmas tree. Once you hit generate, this is going to give you 3 different options to be able to pick and choose from. Again, depending on what you type in and how your reference works, it'll give you some different results. And here's my first result. Notice that it fills up roughly the size of the area we had selected, and as long as you've got it selected, that's where it'll stay. If you don't like what's been created, you can click on the other options that were created from here. Now, for the purpose of this exercise, we want to be able to generate something that's simple and with few details. We don't want to have a lot to be able to take apart or to add shadows or textures to. Also, if you don't like what's been generated the first time, you can always click Generate again, or you can type in a different prompt. In my case, if I did trees in a winter landscape, I'll click Generate. Again, it may take a few moments, but it'll give me a few more options to click and choose from. And this gives me some other great results as well. Once you get something that you like, now we can start to play around with the colors. Just as Adobe Illustrator has AI abilities to generate different imagery, we can also use their AI abilities to recolor our artwork. So with my artwork selected, I'm going to go up to Edit, down to Edit Colors, and choose Generative Recolor. This will open up a new panel, and we can type in a prompt to describe the mood or color palette that we want, or feel free to use some of these sample palettes down below. If I was to choose Terracotta Desert with my artwork selected, it will start to give me a variety of different variations on the colors that are already on here. You can see how very quickly it'll give you some different results. If you don't like these, you can go back and choose a different prompt, or you can type in your own prompt from above. I like the looks of this one. Now that we're done, we can click away, and this will lock in the artwork that we've created. The next thing we need to do is to break this apart into its own separate layers. When Illustrator generates its own imagery, everything is grouped together. So let's go up to Object and choose Ungroup. Now, you may have to do this several times until you can no longer ungroup any of your artwork. There we go. Now that everything is completely ungrouped, We can go to our Layers panel, select Layer 1, and let's open up the options for Layer 1. We want to release everything in the layers to sequence. This will rebuild all of your artwork, placing each individual object into its own individual layer. Now with it done, let's export this as a Photoshop document. Go to File, down to Export, and choose Export As. Make sure you know where your document is being saved to, and let's give it a name. Choose the format, and check your format as being Photoshop. Now that it's a Photoshop document, choose Use Artboards and say Export. Finally, in the Photoshop options, make sure your resolution is set to a high 300 pixels per inch and that you're writing it to layers. Everything else we can keep checked on and say OK. This will take a moment to generate our Photoshop document. Once it's saved, let's open up our Photoshop document in Adobe Photoshop. Now that we're in Adobe Photoshop, you may need to recrop or reorient your artwork. Choose your crop tool to do this. If you need to, you can set it to be a specific ratio, or if you just want a free crop, you can clear it away and have no numbers inside of there. With this done, I'm going to crop mine to be right inside of my artwork. We'll hit check to lock it in, give it a second to crop off. And then finally, we can use our tools and techniques that we've learned for this unit to add shadows, highlights, and even textures. In your Layers panel, open up the Layer 1 to see all of the sublayers inside of that folder. Choose your Move tool, the black arrow at the very top, and make sure Auto Select Layer is turned on. Sometimes it's helpful to show your transform controls. To add highlights and shadows to an area, simply click on the area that you want. In my case, I've got this set of trees selected. If I want to paint inside of that area, I've got the layer selected here. We can turn on Layer Transparency Lock by clicking on this one. With this layer transparency locked down, I can grab my paintbrush tool. Let's pick up this color of yellow, and in my color panel, I'm going to choose a slightly darker version of that color. Now, especially since I have a large soft edge brush, whenever I paint inside of it, you can see how it easily adds those shadows. One of the challenges of this, however, is that you can see sometimes it doesn't get all of the little yellow that's inside of each little part. If you need to, you may have to go over multiple different layers to work through these. I'm going to choose mine to be slightly a little bit more of a red tinge too. I can paint inside of those. Repeat this process for each of the different parts that you want, selecting them, choosing the colors, adding shadows to paint inside of those. When you're finished, save your document as a JPEG. We'll go up to File. You can go ahead and save this as a Photoshop document to make sure it gets all of the layers, but I'm going to do Save as Copy once I'm finished. Under Save as Copy, this will allow you to change it to a JPEG format and choose Save. Upload this new JPEG document to the class page once you're finished.